All right. So, hey, what do you think of games journalism?
Um, as a consumer, it is useless to me. um, I rely much more on word of mouth and so on from my friends. Most of it isn't really games journalism. They're usually banging on about something else, just using the game as a springboard to say whatever. So, and I just don't think they're serving the consumer. I don't think it's got any better. Clickbait is failing as a business model. Online advertising is failing as a business model. Good riddance, frankly. It stopped being worthwhile a very long time ago.
Obviously, the moral panic framing was more important to you, or well, very important to you. Was it also important to you to reform games journalism, or was that not an aspect of Gamergate you were involved with heavily?
I felt it was important because at the time I felt that games journalism could be salvageable. I felt that there could potentially be some sort of halfway house between the kind of extreme version of what Gamergate said they wanted. I don't think they were necessarily understood when they were expressing it, but also allowing room for what the people who had somehow fallen into games journalism wanted. I mean, going way back, computer game reviews used to appear in very technical magazines that were really about like putting your own machine together, things like that. So they were very technical. This game occupies this much memory. It has these graphics. The sound is like this. So it used to be very much what we would have called an objective review, I suppose. These are the technical specs. Here's some screenshots. That sort of thing. That's one extreme. The other extreme is where someone is supposed to be writing a review of a game and instead writes a 3-page rant about rather parochial American politics instead, using it as some sort of springboard to do so. There should be a way to find some sort of ground between the two where you at least describe what the game's specs are, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, before you launch into your tirade about whatever else, or your subjective personal taste, or you thought this was sexist, or we could have had both. I thought, but it didn't pan out that way.
Well, how should games be reviewed in your eyes? Should it be I'm reviewing it based on what I think the developer set out to do and how well they achieved that, or how well I personally enjoyed the game, or how much I think it holds up as an artistic work? There's like so many different ways you could go about it. How do
I
you
don't
go?
think there's any.
Go
I
ahead.
don't think there's any single answer, because there are aspects to it which are objective, and there are aspects to it which are subjective. I mostly review tabletop games on my channel, and what I try to do there is show what's in the book, describe what's in the book, apply my experience of game design to explain to people how I think the mechanics will play out at the table. I will talk about the cost, the amount of value you get from it. So you'll learn in this case books. So you'll learn how thick the book is, what kind of quality the paper is, um, the build quality of the book, whether it feels solid and nice. You'll learn about the mechanics and the key sort of points of the story that's presented in the book, and so on. And then I will also offer my subjective interpretation. So I think there's a combination there, particularly on the websites, which is primarily where games media is situated now. You can have videos demonstrating the gameplay, or you could, if any game journalist could play. Um, Yeah, and you can give the specs, and you can talk about things that are somewhat subjective, like whether the controls are intuitive, that sort of thing. And then after you've covered that, you can then talk about your subjective personal opinions. And then we as the consumer, we can find reviewers who tend to share our taste. So yeah, that's that middle ground, which I think is the right place to be with it.
It's interesting because you said you thought the games press could improve. That's past tense, though. Do you not think they still can?
Yeah, I don't believe that anymore. I just the will isn't there, the money isn't there, and it's still just as, if not more, corrupt. And I've seen some of that corruption directly. My partner used to do reviews on a website, and she gave what was going to be a fairly big MMO at the time a positive but not positive enough review. And this seemed to cause some sort of panic at the office. The company behind the MMO was upset and tried to intervene in various ways. Like they invited her on to be kind of escorted around the game and shown more things about it to try and get her to improve her score. The editor was worried that the company would cut them off from early access and access at all. Yeah, so I saw that kind of corruption directly. And I mean, what are you supposed to do as a games media outlet in the face of that sort of thing? If you stick to your principles, great, you'll get the trust of the gaming community. But by the time you get to review a game, all the other sites who have played ball will have already reviewed it. And you know that you can't trust their scores because they will have scored high in order to keep the company sweet. Yeah, and this is going on all the time, not just in the big cases like GameJournoPros, but all the time. And there's no real hope, I don't think.
Are there any specific reforms? I know you talked a little bit about meeting in the middle, but are there any specific reforms aside from that that you think that you would have liked to have seen happen?
Apply the SPJ rules, which they should have been doing all along, recusing themselves from reviewing things by friends, roommates, ex-lovers, current lovers. You know, it's stuff that's no-brainer, really.
If you were the editor-in-chief of a gaming website and some of your employees were credibly accused of ethical violations, what would you have done?
Start with a public apology and amend those articles with a note of what had been going on, so there would be disclosure. The employees who had done that would get an official warning, and if it happened again, I'd probably operate a 3 strikes rule. Then they'd be out.
I know we've touched upon this a little bit with you mentioning the collusion, but do you have any thoughts on the GameJournoPros list?
It's not surprising that journalists talk to each other. I think professionals of any kind often have back channel communication. So there's not anything necessarily immediately sinister or wrong with that. But the disclosures that we did get from that seemed to show that there was a lot of pressure being applied to anyone who even slightly stepped out of line. So that concerned me, and yeah, there did seem to be organized collusion to create this unified front, and to run cover for people. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it in concept, but with what they were doing, I think that was wrong.
Hi, I'm Tachyon Blue. Thank you for watching another one of my GamerGate book video segments. Altogether, I've interviewed over 70 people involved with GamerGate, and I'm going to be launching a Kickstarter campaign in the coming weeks. So please, I need your support to help make this project a reality. I'm turning these 70 plus interviews into a multi-volume series of books, the first volume of which is already completed. And so I'd like you to please stay tuned for more information about the Kickstarter. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and comment. More updates will be coming in the near future. Thank you, and take care.